The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, stained with dust and bearing news that would change everything. Evangeline Harper held it with trembling fingers, reading the words that confirmed her worst fears. The bank would foreclose on her family's small homestead within 30 days, unless she could produce $200, a fortune she simply did not possess. Snow crunched beneath her worn boots as she walked the familiar path to the Blackwood Ranch, the largest spread in the Montana Territory. The winter of 1878 had been harsh, and spring seemed reluctant to arrive. Ice crystals hung from the fence posts like tiny chandeliers, catching the pale morning light. Evangeline pulled her woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders. At 22, she had already known more hardship than most women twice her age. Her father had died the previous autumn, leaving her alone with debts she could barely comprehend and land she could not manage without help. The ranch house came into view, a sprawling log structure with smoke curling from multiple chimneys. Even from a distance she could see the signs of prosperity. Well-maintained outbuildings, sturdy corrals filled with quality horses, and fields that stretched toward the horizon like a patchwork quilt. Marcus Blackwood was mending a saddle in the stable when she found him. He looked up from his work, his dark eyes registering surprise at her unexpected visit. Snow dusted his black hat, and his breath formed small clouds in the cold air. "Miss Harper," he said, setting down his tools. "This is quite a distance to walk in such weather." Evangeline had known Marcus since childhood, though they had rarely spoken beyond polite greetings at church. He was a man of quiet reputation, fair in his dealings, respected by his neighbors, and notably unmarried at the age of 30. His ranch had prospered while others struggled, largely due to his careful management and willingness to adapt to changing times. "Mr. Blackwood," she began, then paused, suddenly uncertain how to voice her request. The words seemed to stick in her throat like thorns. He waited patiently, his expression kind but unreadable. Steam rose from the horses in the nearby stalls, and somewhere in the distance a cow lowed softly. "I find myself in difficult circumstances," she finally managed. "I was wondering if you might have need of additional help on your ranch. I am willing to work hard in the fields, with the animals, whatever you require." Marcus studied her face carefully. Even in her threadbare coat and patched skirts, Evangeline carried herself with dignity. Her auburn hair was neatly braided, and her green eyes held a determination that spoke of inner strength. "The work would be demanding," he said slowly, "and the pay modest, I understand. I am not afraid of hard work." He was quiet for a long moment, considering. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle. "May I ask what has brought about this need?" Evangeline's cheeks flushed pink, whether from cold or embarrassment, he could not tell. "My father left debts. The bank has given notice. I have 30 days to find $200, or I will lose everything." The sum hung between them in the frigid air. They both knew it would take months of wages to earn such an amount, even if he could afford to pay her what his regular hands received. "I see," Marcus said. He turned back to the saddle, his strong hands working the leather with practiced ease. "There is something I should tell you, Miss Harper. My circumstances have also grown complicated recently." She waited, confused by his words. "My younger brother's wife died in childbirth 3 months ago," he continued. "James could not bear to remain here, so he has gone east to start fresh. He left his infant son, Thomas, in my care." Understanding began to dawn on Evangeline's face. "The boy is barely 6 months old," Marcus said, his voice heavy with worry. "I have been managing with the help of Mrs. Chen, the woman who cooks for my ranch hands, but she has her own family to tend to. The child needs consistent care, someone who can be there when he wakes in the night, someone who understands the needs of an infant." He set down his tools and turned to face her fully. "I was about to place an advertisement in the Denver papers for a housekeeper and nursemaid, someone who could run the household and care for Thomas while I manage the ranch operations." Evangeline felt her heart quicken. "You are offering me the position. I am suggesting we might help each other," Marcus said carefully. "The position would pay well enough to solve your immediate financial troubles and provide for your future security, but it would mean leaving your homestead and living here, in my house." The implications of such an arrangement were not lost on either of them. A young unmarried woman living in the household of an unmarried man would certainly raise eyebrows in their conservative community. "People would talk," Evangeline said quietly. "Yes, they would." She looked out at the snow-covered fields, thinking of her small cabin growing cold and empty. Then she thought of the baby, motherless and in need of gentle care. "May I meet the child?" she asked. Marcus nodded and led her toward the house. They walked in companionable silence, their boots crunching rhythmically on the packed snow. The wind had picked up, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and the promise of more weather to come. Inside, the house was warm and well appointed. Quilts covered the furniture, and the smell of fresh bread lingered in the air. Mrs. Chen, a small Chinese woman with kind eyes, emerged from the kitchen carrying a fussing baby. "He has been restless all morning," she said, bouncing the child gently. "I think he misses his papa." Evangeline approached slowly, extending her arms. The baby looked up at her with solemn blue eyes, his father's eyes. She realized, when she took him, he settled immediately against her shoulder, his small fist curling into her hair. "Hello, little Thomas," she whispered. The baby made a soft cooing sound, and something in Evangeline's heart shifted and settled, like a puzzle piece finding its proper place. Marcus watched this exchange with growing certainty. He had known many women in his 30 years, but none who had stirred in him the feelings that Evangeline Harper inspired. Her gentle nature, her resilience in the face of hardship, the natural way she had taken to his nephew, all of it convinced him that fate had brought her to his door. "The position would include room and board," he said. "Your own private quarters, of course, and a salary of $40 per month." It was more than generous, nearly double what most housekeepers earned. Evangeline looked up from the baby, surprise evident on her face. "That is very kind, but I could not accept such an amount. It would be far too much for simple housekeeping duties." Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "The position I am offering involves more than housekeeping, Miss Harper. I need someone who will care for Thomas as if he were her own child. Someone who will make this house a true home, and if I am being entirely honest, I need someone who might consider making it her permanent home." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning. Evangeline felt her breath catch in her throat. "Mr. Blackwood, I am not certain I understand your meaning." "I think you do," he said softly. "I am suggesting that perhaps, in time, we might find that our arrangement could become something more permanent, something that would benefit us both, and provide young Thomas with the stable family he deserves." Evangeline looked down at the baby in her arms, then back up at Marcus. In his eyes she saw not just kindness, but something deeper, something that spoke of long winter evenings by the fire, of shared meals and quiet conversations, of a future that stretched beyond mere survival. "You are suggesting marriage," she said. "Eventually, yes, if we find ourselves well suited to each other." The baby gurgled and reached up to touch her face with his tiny hand. Outside, the wind howled around the corners of the house, but inside, all was warm and peaceful. "And if we do not find ourselves well," she asked, "then you will have earned enough to secure your own future, whatever path you choose to take." Evangeline considered his words carefully. Here was a man offering her not just employment, but the possibility of genuine partnership, a chance to save her father's land, to care for a child who needed her, and perhaps to find the kind of love she had only read about in books. "I would need to think about such a proposition," she said finally. "Of course, take all the time you need." But even as she spoke the words, Evangeline knew her decision was already made. The way Marcus looked at both her and the baby, with such tender hope in his eyes, the way Thomas had settled so peacefully in her arms, the way this house already felt more like home than her own empty cabin. "Actually," she said, surprising herself with her boldness, "I do not think I need time to think. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, I accept your proposition." A slow smile spread across Marcus's face. All of it, even the part about the possible future arrangement. Evangeline felt her cheeks warm, but she met his gaze steadily, especially that part. He reached out and gently touched the baby's head, his fingers brushing against hers in the process. "Then welcome home, Evangeline." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in pristine white. But inside the warm house, three souls had found exactly what they had been seeking, even if they had not known they were searching for it. As spring arrived and melted the winter snows, Evangeline discovered that Marcus Blackwood was a man of his word. He treated her with respect and kindness, never pressuring her for more than she was ready to give. She ran his household with efficiency and grace, and under her care, baby Thomas thrived and grew. More importantly, she found herself falling genuinely in love not just with the security Marcus offered, but with the man himself. His quiet strength, his gentle humor, his obvious devotion to his nephew, and, increasingly, to her. On a warm evening in late June, as they sat on the porch watching Thomas take his first tentative steps across the wooden planks, Marcus took her hand in his. "I believe we have found ourselves well suited," he said quietly. Evangeline smiled, thinking of the letter that had brought her here. The letter that had seemed like the harbinger of disaster, but had actually been the beginning of her greatest happiness. Yes, she said, squeezing his fingers. I believe we have. Thomas took 3 wobbling steps and fell laughing into Marcus's waiting arms. Above them, the first stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. And Evangeline Harper, soon to be Evangeline. Blackwood had never felt more grateful for the unexpected paths that life sometimes provided. She had come seeking work in the fields, but she had found so much more. She had found love, family, and a future bright with promise.